So, in this segment, we're going to be talking about Johnson feeling the full force at the G7 summit. So, I know this is a bit about a couple of days old, but I thought it's worth covering because it does show you how kind of concerned G7 members are, barring I think Italy and Japan, are concerned about the UK's actions. So that's why it's worth covering. Not to mention the fact that it's pretty funny that global Britain is getting bullied by sort of countries which are, I think, for the most part, economically stronger than us. But yeah, so the 3-day G7 meeting of world leaders, which ends on Sunday, was identified months ago by the Prime Minister as the moment to launch his vision of a confident post-Brexit global Britain. So this was the moment Boris Johnson was going to use. I think they wanted to sign the Australia deal here to prove that Britain is still a force to be reckoned with. And now, we're going to do bits. We're going to, do trade deals with multiple other countries, good trade deals that aren't going to be worth 0.02% of our GDP and which could ultimately result in a negative GDP rating depending on the damage it does to our local economy and farming industries. This is the image Boris Johnson wanted to give out to the world. A strong Britain, And, clearly Angela Merkel there did not want to elbow bump Boris Johnson. Don't really blame her, to be fair. But it says here, but after 2 full days of seaside photo ops, a largely pre-cooked announcement. So these were things that were already in the pipeline, just, to be kind of reiterated, including a new US-UK Atlantic Charter modelled on the historic statement made by Churchill and Roosevelt, the special relationship, the idea that these kind of two nations are aligned, even though we're really not, given that America did recently get rid of their kind of moron, and ours is going to be in power till 2024 at the minimum. So yeah, not great, but the so-called special relationship still apparently exists, even though I really don't think it does. There was still one narrow, familiar and hugely dangerous issue that was overshadowing progress elsewhere, Brexit, which is still, the shadow hanging over us, really, the sword of Damocles, as Boris Johnson will try and say. It's still there, and it's still a major problem. Probably more now than it's ever been, given the situation in Northern Ireland, which we'll be talking about probably some point in the next few days. So unhappiness at the UK's attitude to Brexit, its potential effect on the Good Friday Agreement, was undermining Johnson's summit, power plays, and his relationship with fellow G7 leaders. And, Boris Johnson's kind of, let's not forget here, there were multiple G7 members and also a global effort that was involved in getting the Good Friday Agreement. We only talk really about Britain and America's role in the Good Friday Agreement, but the Canadians were involved. I think some of the Scandinavian countries were involved. If you know of a country that was involved in the formation of the Good Friday Agreement, mention it in the comments, because there were quite a few that were needed to kind of defuse the entire situation. So Boris Johnson is destroying the kind of legacy of these countries by undermining the Good Friday Agreement, which is detrimental to keeping peace within Northern Ireland and Ireland. Tensions over the Northern Ireland issue were preoccupying Joe Biden, a guy who strongly associates himself with Ireland, despite the fact that he was born in the States. Now, his father, I think, came from Ireland to America, and he associates himself very strongly with the country, probably more so than any president in modern history. So Joe Biden, at his first G7 as US president, he was probably there before as VP, but now he's the top dog now, and causing real anger in French and German delegations, which is of course true. It makes sense that these are members of the EU, and they're going to be very upset at the situation, considering that the UK keeps kind of breaching our own agreements that we signed not very long ago. In terms of implementation, we signed it in 2019, but it's only been implemented for less than 7 months, and we're crying about it. We've been crying about it since January, which is pretty embarrassing. So the reason for much of the EU's irritation was a feeling that the UK under Johnson simply could not be trusted, and the issue with diplomacy, international diplomacy, especially with powers that are as strong or stronger than you, is trust. And at the moment, the UK cannot be trusted because we are breaching agreements. And, international countries that do this often become a pariah, the sick man of whichever continent they are. The UK currently is the sick man of Europe. And we are a country that criticised other countries for their lack of human rights when it was convenient to do so, their lack of trustworthiness when it was convenient to do so. And now we are that country that when we criticise other countries, they're going to hit us back with a statement that says, well, you're the country breaking all the agreements, so who are you to tell us what we can and can't do when you're no better yourself? So throughout recent weeks and on Saturday, the Prime Minister made it clear he would be prepared to unilaterally delay the full implementation of the Northern Ireland Protocol, part of the Brexit withdrawal agreement. So it's important to note that Frost has asked for an extension, and the EU have confirmed they have received Frost's sort of ask, or I don't know what the word is, but yeah, his kind of request. There you go, his request for the extension. So that's going to be interesting because the UK has threatened to use Article 16 and threatened to suspend the protocol and stuff like that. But Frost has actually asked for an extension before taking unilateral action, which is something he hasn't done in March. So perhaps the force of the G7 summit did have an impact on British foreign policy. We don't know yet because we don't know what the EU's response is going to be. But it's kind of interesting that he previously took unilateral action, but now he's asking instead of taking, if that makes sense. So restrictions on British-produced chilled meats entering Northern Ireland are due to come into force at the end of this month, so end of June, as part of the Brexit deals struck and much hailed by the Prime Minister at the time, and that's important. Boris Johnson said this was a great deal. Many Brexiteers said this was a great deal, and you won't find many, but people like Julie Hartley-Brewer says that throwing Ireland under the bus was worth it, and I'm sure that's going to do great to tame tensions within Northern Ireland. I'm sure that's really going to help the situation. You saying, it was worth it to throw Ireland under the bus to strike up trade deals with countries that are going to add 0.02% to our GDP. Phenomenal. So yeah, he said it was a great deal. It clearly wasn't, and we've already spoken previously about how the British government has basically said that signing the agreeing to the Northern Ireland Protocol was a bad idea. The only reason Boris Johnson did it is in order to get his big general election win. He was hoping he'd wriggle out of it, and so far he's struggling, as slimy as the guy is. On Saturday, in a triple whammy of meetings between 8 a.m. with Macron, Merkel, and then Commission President von der Leyen, and European Council President Charles Michael, the Europeans' fury at Johnson for going back on the treaty became clear. And do you know what? I'm kind of surprised and slightly annoyed, ever so slightly, that the Italians didn't get a jab in as well, because that would have showed a lot more unity from EU nations. But to be fair, when you've got France, Germany, you got von der Leyen and Charles Michael, then maybe that's more than enough. So their annoyance is unlikely to have been lifted by the presence of at all the meetings. By the presence at all the meetings of Lord Frost. He was there at all of them. He's a guy causing problems. Throwing out constant basic and pointless criticisms at the EU, which A, aren't going to resolve the situation, and B, aren't true. He asked for pragmatism, flexibility, and all these buzzwords, which really don't mean a lot. Where do you want the EU to be flexible? Which areas? What specifically do you want that adhere to EU rules and can be done through committees? Because if you can't offer those, then you're full of lies. And if anyone says technology, you're going to get muted. So Biden had made his views on the threat to the Good Friday Agreement known in no uncertain terms before the summit began, issuing orders to the UK side to sort the matter out quickly through compromise. So people think that through compromise they expect the EU to compromise, when the Northern Ireland Protocol in itself was a compromise anyways. Joe Biden equates the success of the Northern Ireland Protocol to the success of the Good Friday Agreement, and therefore when it goes wrong, which it could ultimately do, I think Joe Biden will blame the UK side. We've already spoken about Yael Lampert, the top US ambassador to the UK, saying that what you're doing is she blasted Lord Frost. Basically, that's a separate video, but it's clear that the US will blame the UK if this goes wrong. At his meeting with the PM, Macron told Johnson, according to well-placed summit sources, that Franco-British relations could only be reset if he stood by the Brexit divorce deal, which he had signed with the EU. So he offered la reset, between Britain and France, which relationship has been a bit shaky. Let's not forget there was the whole spat over fishing off the island of Guernsey. So, for his part, Johnson accuses the EU of being inflexible and purist over the legally binding agreement. But the thing is, you agree to this, it's very clear, there'll be restrictions on certain things which we've mentioned before, and the simple fact that, as, the doc points out, Dr. Anna Jowazeska, that, the UK can only argue facts and pass narrative. It can't argue facts and always argues about narrative, things like the EU are being bloody-minded and purist, etc., when, these are pointless accusations because, yes, there's an agreement and they're asking us to stick with it. You can talk about the spirit of the agreement, but when it goes to court, they'll mainly talk about the letter of the law, which the letter of the law is that certain products are banned or restricted under the agreement, the Northern Ireland Protocol that the UK signed and said was great. So how are you going to argue that when these quotes will be brought up in court if it goes there? Foreign policy experts and former British diplomats said that while the summit may have its successes on advancing initiatives on climate change and vaccinations for developing countries, which is great because a lot of them have announced that they're going to be supplying developing countries with a lot of vaccines, is also showing the UK to be distrusted and therefore unable to be a true global leader, which is true. How can you be the world leader on the global stage when you cannot be trusted? You sign agreements and then get rid of them really quickly. You can argue the Americans can't be trusted either, but despite the honorary title of leader of the free world and stuff like that, I don't trust the Americans either because they do often cause issues around the world. So it'd be up to a different country to kind of hold that title, but the simple fact is the UK are brazenly breaking an agreement that they signed not long ago. So Nigel Sheinwald, a former UK ambassador to Washington, said, "The lesson of this week is that you can't have a global Britain which is genuinely respected, influential and impactful around the world if people doubt your basic bona fides. There is no point in writing a new Atlantic Charter which depend on mutual trust, mutual confidence and the rule of law when you are operating as chancellors. And the simple fact is, if you are signing a deal with the UK that's based on trust, that's not going to work because you can't be trusted. And even when the writing's in black and white that the UK is going to do a certain thing, you cannot trust the UK to do it. That's the simple truth of this situation." Sheinwald added that Biden would now be expecting Johnson to solve the Northern Ireland impasse with the EU. So again, it looks like the pressure is on Boris Johnson to fix the issue, not on the EU, which means that if things do start happening and there's no agreement to an extension on chilled meats and things get very violent as kind of marching season comes to pass now, which is going to happen soon, at whatever time of the year, normally during the summer when the events happened hundreds of years ago and blah, blah, blah. When that happens, there's going to be trouble. And no one wants to see violence, but by the looks of things, the Americans, for any rising tensions, will blame the UK, will blame England for it. So Lord Peter Ricketts, a former permanent secretary at the Home Office and also an ex-UK ambassador to France, said Johnson was finding out that it was not possible to have good bilateral relations with France and Germany while treating the EU like an enemy, which makes sense. The EU is has a lot of things that give equality. That any EU sort of leader can veto certain things. But at the end of the day, the main heads of the EU are now Germany and France. It was Germany, the UK, and France, but we decided to leave. So by constantly attacking France and Germany, you're not going to make any friends with the EU, anyways. And by attacking the EU, you're going to have bad relationships with multiple EU members, especially France, the French and the Germans, who really believe in the EU as an institution. So it doesn't make sense, the UK strategy here. So Ricketts said they announced the new Atlantic Charter 2 days ago, which has bold lines about sustaining international law and the norms of standards and international corporations that will uphold rules based on order, and then we threatened to walk away from a deal that we signed 18 months ago. So there's a total lack of coherence there, which I think people sense. And it makes sense that, look, if you're trying to say we're going to uphold law and order and all these things, right, and then you go back an agreement you made recently, it's not a good look, is it? And other countries will take note of this, that when the UK criticises them, this is a thing that they will say to us. So this person, Ricketts, goes on to say, in these bilateral meetings with Macron and Merkel, rather than flashing out a policy on China, which is in our and Biden's own interest, instead leaders are distracted by having to make these polemic points about Europe. And the issue is that we're not going to be able to take on other global issues, such as the lack of vaccines within developing countries as effectively, because these leaders now are going to be desperate to solve the issue within Northern Ireland, especially as the UK-Australia deal is coming around, and there's no guarantee that meat is not going to be going towards Northern Ireland, which is in the EU single market, the EU's single market for goods, not the UK. So that those goods going into Northern Ireland would breach the Northern Ireland Protocol. So that's a problem there, and we don't know how to fix that, apart from obviously having better checks and making sure things are done properly. But by the looks of the UK-Australia deal, there are going to be gaps that may allow Australian, hormone beef to get into the UK. Again, we're not 100% sure yet because we can't see the full details of the trade deal because of the fact Parliament signed away sovereignty, and we'll cover that in another video in a couple of days. So we'll go back to this one, which is Kim Darroch, another former UK ambassador to Washington and the EU, said an international agreement is not an a la carte menu from which you can choose what you like and ignore the rest. This idea that we could cherry pick things that we wanted is not working. It was never going to work because other countries weren't going to do that. The UK kind of believes that we can still bully nation states around. The thing is, maybe we can for weaker ones. But when you're dealing with countries that are economically not too far off from you, and also stronger than you, and also the fact that these member states that are around our own power level have also banded together to form an international institution, it does put us in a much weaker scenario. So the a la carte menu thing makes sense. Sort of Kim Darroch's point on it, and he says once you sign off on it, you have to implement it properly and fully. Global Britain is not going to work unless we are seen to live up to our commitments. And the thing is, right, what if Australia start breaching parts of our trade deal with them? What if we say to Australia, look, we're not going to allow the imports of hormone beef, etc., and Australia say cool, and then they breach part of the agreement. They start sending stuff just to check out how good are the checks, etc. What are you going to say to Australia? Are you going to say, look, we have an agreement here, you're not sticking by it? Australia going to say, well, you guys can't be trusted either, and if we're talking about rule breaking, you've broken an agreement too, so who are you to tell us what we can and can't do? And that might scupper the UK-Australia deal. But the thing is, they don't really need it that much either. We're not in the top 5 of trading partners, and even with this deal, we still won't be. Yeah, they can export more Australian wine and beef and stuff like that, but we are not a priority for them. This deal is probably a bonus for them, realistically, given how far we are from them geographically. So, what's going to stop other countries from breaking agreements with us when we proved ourselves that we are not trustworthy? Let me know what you think about that, and that's going to wrap up this video. So let me know what you think about it in the comments below. Like, comment, share, subscribe. The UK feeling the full force of the G7, and yeah, it's pretty embarrassing, isn't it, that we are getting bullied essentially by countries that we are and should continue to be allies with. But anyways, I'm going to leave it there. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Like, comment, share, subscribe, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one.